So we had Eric Schmidt here earlier.
Yeah.
There are, and we'll get into some of this, and I'm sure you get tired of it, but this is actually Robin's first conversation in front of an industry conference in the United States. I mean, you've had lots of experience working here and going to school here, but you started a company in China, and it's become quite successful. And there was an article in Business Week last week about Baidu, and in it there was a quote from Eric in which he described Google's retreat from China as a great gift to you. Is that how you saw it?
Well, when 5 years ago, when Google decided to set up their China operation, I was asked a similar question. People asked me, if you were Eric, what would you do to win China? And I said, I would stay at least 6 months a year in China. Apparently, Eric didn't take my advice, and hence I knew eventually he will hand me a gift. So that happened.
It did happen. Your stock is up double since January. Your market cap is pushing 40 billion, and I think that maybe folks don't realize that, but that puts you at the size of
roughly eBay.
Roughly eBay.
Yeah.
You've been one of the best performing stocks in the market, bar none, not just in the internet space. Mm-hmm. Do you feel pressure to continue that rocket ship ride? Is this something that you and your employees think about?
No, you know, when I founded this company about 10 years ago, I never knew that search could be so profitable. The reason I decided to do this was because I really liked the search, and I thought search was very useful. And I could come up with a product that could be used by lots of people, millions of people, hundreds of millions of people. And I knew I could achieve that. That's the purpose of doing this. And now I don't need more money, but I need to make my products better, make more people to use our product. So that's the ambition, or that's the driver behind my daily work. So I don't really try to manage the stock price or give myself pressure on those kind of things. Maybe some of you know that back 5 years ago when we went public on NASDAQ, the IPO price was 27, and on the first day it closed at 122. That kind of pressure was much higher, heavier to me, and I went through that kind of things. The stock has been up and down for almost every year. I'm used to that. But what matters to me is that the number of users keep growing, and the traffic keep growing, that the revenue keep growing, the profit keep growing. So that makes me feel comfortable and happy. And I know that we still have a lot of room for growth, because in this country, in the US, it took about 10 years for the internet market to really mature in terms of user or internet penetration. But in China, we started roughly at the same time. Back in '95, there were internet companies in China. And now, the internet penetration rate is only about one third. So we still have a lot of room for growth, and maybe 10 years down the road, the internet penetration rate is still not as good.
Now, when you say one third, how many
Baidu.
actual people is that?
That's 420 million.
420 million. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
How big can it get?
There are more than double that number of mobile phones in China. And eventually, I think all mobile phones will be internet enabled. So I would say 800 million wouldn't be an unreasonable number.
And how many of those 420 million people are Baidu users?
99% of the Chinese users use Baidu.
99%?
Yeah, we have a very high coverage. So
I think backstage there's a guy named Yusuf Mehdi that would like to talk with you.
Well, we actually use, we actually answer more queries in China than any other search engine does than any other market.
Including Google in the United States?
Including, yeah.
I told you it was interesting. But let me pivot for a second here, because I think there's a question that needs to be asked, which is why did Google leave? I'm not asking you that question. I think it's not fair necessarily for you to answer it, though it might be interesting. The general understanding of why Google left was that they felt they could not compete in a market that they felt was not allowing them to play in a way that they considered to be fair. That they had to censor their search results and their other products, and that they weren't always sure if their domain would resolve on any given day. And then there were some hacking incidents that occurred, and they weren't certain whether they came from the government or not. And they got the sense, I'm certainly projecting here, that perhaps they weren't in a level playing field, and that perhaps Baidu was a favored son of the Chinese government. How do you respond to that idea?
Well, that's a common misperception about China's internet market, where the success of Baidu, including the Binswick article you just mentioned, people generally think, oh, Baidu is the only game in town. Chinese users don't have many choices, and Baidu is favored, so that they are successful. But the reality is there are a lot more choices in China than you do in the United States for web search. Here you have Google, you have Bing. What's the number 3? You don't know. But in China, in addition to these two, we have Tencent. They have their own web search technology, Sohu, the web portal, has their Sogou search. You have NetEase, another web portal, has their own web search called Youdao. There are a couple more. So many Chinese companies are doing search, and US companies are also offering search services in China or from other places.
If not due to the factors that I described, why else do you think that Google was not successful in China?
I think China is a very different market, first of all. It's different in 3 senses. First is that China is a large and growing market. It's growing, meaning it's changing. The market condition changes every day. If you're not close to that market, it's very difficult for you to keep up with it, with the market demand. Secondly, there are lots of VC money. Lots of Silicon Valley VCs went there way before Google did. So they poured money into the local market, founded a lot of entrepreneurs there. So there's always a lot of competition in China's internet space. And third reason is that there are lots of Chinese engineers here in the United States, and they're very well trained. Many of them are willing to go back to China, join a local company, or start their own company. So with these 3 conditions, it makes China a very different market. If you are not prepared to compete in this kind of market, you're not going to be successful. And for Baidu in particular, I think, first of all, we did try harder. You know, when I moved back to Beijing 10 years ago, a I just, I give up all the job stock options here in Silicon Valley.
You were working at InfoSeek?
InfoSeek,
You were an engineer, and and this was about the same time as the PageRank algorithm. You wrote an algorithm yourself, correct? A similar algorithm.
That's before I joined InfoSeek.
Right.
I was asked to join InfoSeek because they found that my algorithm was link analysis, and I believe I was the first one to get that kind of patent from the U.S. Patent Office. But anyway, I gave up all those things and went back to China, and we did, over the past 10 years, we basically did nothing but Chinese search. We were very focused, and we were close to the market, so we came up with a lot of innovative ideas related to search in general and Chinese search in particular. For example, in 2003, I think it's before the Web 2.0 concept was coined, we started to add user-generated content into our search services. We came up with a service called Postbar. It's basically a query-based community, online community. When you type in any inquiry, we have a bar or message board system that for you to discuss. You can either ask questions or answer other people's questions or make comments. In the early days in the Chinese internet space, there were not much Chinese information online. There were not enough information available. So we created this product that people can contribute a lot of useful information on our platform.
Somewhat like a Wikipedia-like product?
It's different from Wikipedia. We have a product called the Baidu encyclopedia. That's like Wikipedia. That's also #1 in Chinese. We also have a Baidu Answers, Baidu Knows, which is a question answering service. Chinese users have already answered more than 100 million questions on that platform. So we have a lot of this. The Postbar thing is unique. I haven't found a similar product here in the US yet. We added a lot of community or social flavor to our search that our users feel they really belong here. It's very hard for them to switch.
So do you have sort of a social network incorporated into the search? Because that's been the holy grail. We've got sort of two very powerful companies, one younger than the other, Facebook and Google, really in a pretty significant battle for getting into each other's business, basically. Do you see any parallels in China, or is it developing differently?
It's different. The purpose of our community initiatives are really to make the search function better and stronger. So all of the products, encyclopedia or Knows or Postbar, they're designed so that users can contribute quality content to our system or our platform. And they have a sense of belonging, sense of community, so that they don't switch. So that's add switching cost for a search service.
Would you, if would it ever make sense for you to integrate something like Facebook Connect into Baidu search?
We don't have a full-blown social graph yet.
Well, I'm sure Mark Zuckerberg would love to change that.
But I think the purpose of our product is to make search easier. If any feature can do that, I'll be happy to add that.
Well, Mark will be here tomorrow, so you guys can talk.
All right.
What's it like to do? One of the reasons I was excited that you're here is because I think everybody thinks about how do we, we've got a great product here in the United States. How do we get it out into one of the world's largest markets? You've worked in both markets. You've succeeded in both markets.
Yeah.
Give us a bit of an insight on what is it like to build a company with an entrepreneurial, culture in in China, which is a very different culture, a very different government, environment. What could we learn from how you've navigated those waters?
Well, China is an emerging market. Not everything is developed, so you need to be a little bit patient. When I went back 10 years ago, a lot of people told me, oh, it's very difficult to set up a company in China. In the US, it can happen in one day, but in China, it may take 20 days. I said, it's okay. I hire a consultant, asked him to do this for me while applying for a license for the company. We already started to rent office space and started to program. It doesn't hurt so much. As long as you keep open-minded, you do what you have control of. There are things that you cannot control. The censorship issue, the bureaucracy, or the slow internet connection, the low penetration rate. Those are the things you really don't have control of. So don't complain and try to get around or solve the problem.
It's interesting that you lay out all those things you don't have control over. What's your response to, in the United States, the censorship issue, which you said, well, there's censorship, low internet penetration, but those two things are so different. And here in the United States, there's a presumption of that there is no censorship, and that people can say what they want to say, and that, when you search the web, you see the web. You don't see a part of the web that's been blessed by the government. Is that a frustration for you at Baidu, or is that just sort of in the air that you breathe, and therefore it's sort of like, well, we've got censorship and we've got low internet penetration and our bandwidth isn't what we'd like it to be?
It was a frustration when I started to encounter this kind of problem about 1 year after the company was founded. My first reaction was also, let's move to Hong Kong.
Move to Hong Kong.
Yeah. But after a careful round of thought, I realized that wouldn't work for me. Because the Chinese know I'm Chinese. So I don't have any other choices. If I were to move to Hong Kong, they would call me some kind of anti-government person. So my life would be ruined. If an American company decide not to obey the Chinese law, they will still call them strategic partners. So for me, I don't have any choices. Right. I don't have any control on that.
Well, I find it very interesting that the government, perhaps because they also know that you have 99% of the internet users in China who use your service, recently announced that they're going to start a search engine. Gosu? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's not something new, though. The different Chinese government department may try to do different things. This one, I think it's a joint venture between China Mobile and the Xinhua News Agency. I think People's Daily also have their own search initiatives. It's okay. Providing more choices to the Chinese users is not a bad thing. But we are allowed to compete in a market that we belong to.
So you mentioned, I just think, how extraordinary would it be if the U.S. government announced that they were going to start a search engine with, I don't even know if there is a corollary for the news service, but that would be unthinkable. But for you, it's just sort of part of the environment you have to deal with.
Yeah, China has a very strong government. The government can do a lot of things. But as long as
I think you may have just
competition
that might have been
allowed.
An understatement.
I'm not worried.
Well, that's great. I'm learning stuff here. So let's talk about mobile for a second, because that was the market that they decided they were going to work sort of focus on. And it is clearly what we're talking about here this year at Web 2 is the impact of mobile.
Right.
How is that developing in China? And if you ran a mobile app startup or were in that ecosystem here in the United States, what were the one or two things that you should know about mobile in China?
Yeah. Like I said, there are about 800 million mobile phones in China, but not a large portion of them internet enabled yet. I think last time I saw the number was probably 150 million mobile internet users. But there's a catch. Most of them...
Only 150 million.
There's a catch. Most of them actually use 2G phones to go on the internet, which means it's slow and expensive. And the carriers charge them by number of bytes that's transmitted over their phone. So there are those high-end people who use smartphone. Very few of them don't care about the cost, and 3G is available, but not very popular yet. There are the vast majority of other Chinese people who are generally low income. They cannot afford for a PC. They may be a nanny or migrant worker during the night when they lie on their bed and they open up their phone and go on the internet. So the user behavior is very different. And I think it will change as the 3G network becomes more mature and more people use a smartphone. The user behavior will change and product will change. It's just we don't know yet what the killer app will be because the status is not very stable. We don't even know what's the most popular device to go online 2 or 3 years down the road.
Well, could Baidu, much as Google did with its acquisition of Android, could Baidu provide that stable platform? Would that be something that you would see as a move you might make in the future?
Well, our vision about the future of either mobile search or search in general is something called box computing, which means in the future, for whatever device you use, when you power on the device, it will be on instantly, within 1 second, instead of waiting for 20 seconds for the operating system to boot up. Within 1 second, you see a search box. It's no longer a search box, it's a ubiquitous box that it can do whatever you want to do. It basically replaces the operating system. You can search for information, you can run an application from that box, or you can publish your tweets or whatever you want to do. The box is intelligent enough to understand your intention. That's our vision of the future.
Now, how do you make... and by the way, please come to the mics now because I don't want to lose any potential input from the audience with Robin here. It's very rare that we have him. But how do you execute that vision?
We are developing all kinds of technologies to support that. And one key part of that is to truly understand users' intention. Because we are the largest search engine, people pour all kinds of requests, all kinds of queries into our search box. So we know for certain type of user needs, for example, weather, there are probably 200 different ways of asking what's today's weather. So we know all kinds of different ways of expression for the same meaning. So we can better understand users' intention. And once we have that, it's easier to deliver the service, to deliver the application or text or information to our users.
Get to you once again. I have one other question. There are a lot of entrepreneurs here. And one of the great stories in the United States of entrepreneurs is the moment they are offered an ungodly amount of money to sell their company. And then they say no. And that narrative is sort of mythic in the Valley. This happened to you a number of times.
Yes. Yeah.
Right before your IPO, and $1.5 billion to $2 billion was offered to you for Baidu by Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft, as I understand it. Why did you say no?
Because I knew Baidu had much larger potential than $1 or $2 billion. At that time, China's internet market was very, very small. Over the past 5 years, I think our revenue went up by 30 times. I didn't think that the guys from Google, Microsoft, or Yahoo realized that Baidu's revenue could go up 30 times in 5 years. But I realized that. I knew that was going to happen. So I tried to convince our investors, don't sell the company. You'll make more money if you don't.
I think they're pleased with your decision.
They are.
A question over here.
Yeah, hi, this is Karthik with DCCAP. India is an equally emerging market just like China. But why do you think in India there is no search engine like Baidu, and why are we so dependent on Google?
I think one important thing for India is that probably the most popular language is English, or most of the available information, written information online is English. In that sense, Google probably already solved the problem before anyone could come up with a better technology. For China, it was very different. 10 years ago when I went back, people are used to wait for 5 seconds for the search engine to turn up the results. It was very slow. The result was inaccurate. For Chinese characters, Chinese language, there's no space between words. You need to parse the characters into words and then index them. So Chinese language is also different. And the available information, Chinese information available online was very little, and we had to help users to create content. But the speed of information growth was very high. So we in the first 3 to 5 years, we basically tripled our index size every year. But search engine space here think, okay, the overall internet grows by 30% or 50% a year, then I grow my index by 50% a year. It's good enough. But for China, we were able to grow our index much faster to keep up with the fast change market there. So I'm not so familiar with India, but that would be my guess. Yeah.
Oh, we have one more question over here, and then we'll have to stop the questions, I'm afraid. We've got the mic up.
What do you think we do differently or we don't do well in America that maybe we can learn from China?
The question was, because the mic wasn't live, what do we not do well in America that we might learn from China?
I think for most of the ideas, China learned from the U.S. because U.S. internet developed much earlier and had a much larger scale. But in recent years, there are innovations coming out from Chinese market because we already have the largest internet population in the world. For search, like I mentioned, starting from 2003, we start to add community flavor or social flavor to our search. That made our search very sticky. It's very hard to switch. For social, there's a Chinese company called Tencent. They are probably earlier than Facebook in building a really social network. They also have hundreds of millions of users, active users. They started as an instant messenger, but became very, very dominant in China. So they start to add a lot of value-added services to their platform and become very profitable. I think that this kind of things are different from the U.S. maybe U.S. Can pay a little more attention about it. Even more important is that going forward, you should pay more attention to that market because that's the largest market in terms of users. And at that market, people will be able to encounter new problems. And when you know what problems you have, then you start to solve problems and start to innovate.
Right.
Yeah.
So let me close with this question. Are you coming to the United States or any other areas with your services? Do you see that as a natural extension of what you do, given what you just said?
Well, we do have an ambition to expand outside of China. Right now, we have a Japanese operation which is up for 2 years. And in the future, we will start to add more different languages. But U.S. is probably not a higher priority because this is a very large and relatively mature market. We'll need to think more carefully about it. And if we came up with ideas that's different and better, we'll do it. Otherwise, we'll wait.
Well, please join me in thanking Robin for coming here today. Robin,
Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you very much.